welcome to another Green Live. It's a great pleasure to have all of you here today because every week we have something special for you, and it is content for fighting climate change. And every business leader requires content and action to make this crisis a thing of the past. It's a great pleasure to welcome, as usual, Carlos, Diaz, Stamatia, and Adriana. Thank you so much for joining today. How are you?
We are great. Hello, Pedro.
Hello, Pedro.
Well, it's wonderful to have all of you here today because today we're going to talk about a very specific industry topic. We really want to have a series of conversations with you that cover specific industries. And today we have the pleasure to have a Greek with us who is a specialist in shipping. She knows everything and has put together a lot of content for us. Stamatia. Stamatia, can you introduce to us what is it that you have in your mind and how this content is going to be discussed today? The shipping, sustainable shipping.
Sure, Pedro. We aim to give an overview of which are those emissions and wastes that are coming from ships and the shipping companies, and then we'll give some more insights on the regulations that this specific industry has, and at the end, we will give an overview how SAP can help and which are those solutions that can help our customers.
Fantastic. So now, Adriana, let's start with you then. Let's hear from you an overview about that.
Sure. So historically, shipment companies and ports did not have such an oversight for environment at the beginning. But in the 60s, there were lots of oil spills, which brought lots of coastal pollution and seabird mortality, and this brought a lot of awareness on the environmental topic and also some regulations. Yeah, so shipping is polluting in different ways the maritime environment. It can be through air pollution or greenhouse gas emissions, and here they have different emissions from CO2, NOx emissions, sulfuric dioxide. So it's not only CO2, but it's others as well. And it seems that these emissions have been on the rise recently. And the International Maritime Organization is expecting these emissions to rise, even triple down by 2050 if there is no action to be taken. Therefore, back in the 2018, they have already started to work on that and worked on agreement to reduce these carbon emissions, these GHG emissions, at least by 50% by 2050, and then phase them out through the end of the century. So basically, in the last years, this has been increasing with more than 10%, and they are using heavily fuel like heavy oil. Yeah. So imagine shipping has been started in a much more sustainable way. They were using wind sailing, yeah. Then they have moved to heavy fuel oil, and now we're trying to move them back to other more sustainable solutions like wind, like solar energy, and hydrogen fuel, biofuels, and so on. So if you think also about other types of pollution that we get from shipping, it's not only about the air, but it's also about the impact they have on the water. Yeah, there is also waste coming from there, garbage, waste coming from cargo, and so on. They use a lot of chemicals, substances for making sure that they don't get all these aquatic species on the bottom of the ship. Those have very specific chemical substances to remove it and to make sure that they don't move species from one place to another. Then there is also the ballast water. Imagine they have to keep the balance of these ships. So they basically have tanks which they fill with water. And of course, with the water, they get different aquatic species in. And once they get to the destination, they need to release that water. So they need to make sure that that water is pure. They are not bringing different species from one place to another, because this could be really invasive for the environment. But it's not only about that, it's also about the noise that they create. It's also about the fact that there is a risk of ship grounding, sinking, of course, ship strikes on marine megafauna, and so on. So, of course, they have been trying to move to renewable energy as well. Everybody is trying to do that, even though right now there is not much progress, unfortunately. And this is also because there is not much motivation in the industry. There are little incentives for ship owners and for operator of the ships, and also there is a lack of commercial viability of this of different systems to make things work and be more efficient. So therefore, what is happening right now is that there are lots of research doing in the space of technology and how they can move to more renewable energy sources, but also they are trying to improve the energy efficiency. So basically, through technical or mechanical operations, they are trying to improve the propulsion of the ships, make it better, reduce the energy that they are consuming, reduce the amount of fuel that they are consuming, even when they travel or even when they are standing still in the port. So as far as it regards renewable energy, they are working on different areas. Like I was saying, moving again back to using wind, trying to use solar photovoltaics because sun is always there available for ships during the days specifically. And also looking at alternative fuels like biofuels and hydrogen. They have been already some experiments, some pilots done in that area, and there are lots of other pilots coming and demonstrating that this can work both for smaller ships and for bigger ships. But like I was saying, the problem is that there is no commercial viable system. There are plenty of applications and there are plenty of different types of ships over there. But not only, you have to think also about the tourism, you have to think also about the transportation of persons, the different services
And I
that they
think
offer, the
one
tourism itself.
one of the things that
Yes,
we are
Carlos.
about to understand, one of the things that we are about to understand with Stamatia is basically, if this has been the reality for the last few years, what has changed dramatically now, and why all those ship operators have now the compelling event? Who is creating and how we are creating that compelling event? And that's you're presenting to us all the difficult dimensions to really shift towards a clean shipping industry. But what is happening in the regulation space? Why are we talking about shipping right now?
It's a great question. Stamatia, over to you.
Yes. So I will start from the start. So I would like to mention that the regulatory framework of the shipping companies is being given by the International Maritime Organization, IMO. IMO is a United Nations agency which is responsible for the safety and security of the ships and the prevention of marine and atmospheric pollution by ships. So the IMO, if we can go to the slides, to the respective slides, the IMO has taken some specific actions already from 1997. And in 2013, they have put some strict regulations for the shipping owners, which we will talk later. And if we go to the third slide, they aim to reduce at least 50% the total annual greenhouse gas emissions by 250, and that means approximately 85% CO2 reduction per ship, with the total aim to reach the zero greenhouse gas emissions within the century. But which are those main regulations that IMO has imposed? So first one, it is the EEDI, the Energy Efficiency Design Index. These regulations has to do with the new ships, the ships that are new, and it has to do it requires that the engine, that the equipment that are used for the building of the new ships are less polluting the environment. But this is not enough. We should also check and how those equipments are operating. So then they position the SEEMP regulations, Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan, which has to do with a plan to operate and improve the energy efficiency of the ships, and also it has to do how the ship is operating. SEEMP proposes also some tools of how to monitor the energy efficiency. So it proposes the Energy Efficiency Operator Index. So any company, any shipping company can use this tool so as to monitor the energy efficiency. Specifically in European Union, the Monitor Reporting and Verification, MRV, is compulsory for all the large ships that are using European Union ports. And it is a reporting for the CO2 emissions, and it gives the CO2 emissions, the fuel consumption, the distance traveled, the time at sea, and the cargo carried. And by 30 April of each year, all shipping companies should send a report to the European Commission about their CO2 emissions, and afterwards the European Commission gives a full report for Europe.
So, Stamatia, you're telling us that several things. First is for new ships, there's new regulation, but the majority of ships are not new, and they're gonna, when you build the ship, you have it operating for many decades. So you're telling us that there's also regulation for those ships, larger ships, also to report on how much energy they are using, how much GHG emissions they are producing. That's so far what I've heard from you. And now you're going to tell about what's the new regulation, what other things are coming, and where are the compelling events, correct?
Yes. And the new ones that are coming and will come into force in January 2023 is the Energy Efficiency Existing Shipping Index, EEXI, which is similar to EEDI, but it is for the existing ships and not only for the new ships that are building. And the next one is the CII, Carbon Intensity Indicator, which gives the performance of the ships, and it gives a rating from A to E. And if a ship has a rating low, for example, D or E, then they need to submit a correction action plan. And these are the new regulations that are coming that has to do with energy efficiency.
Yeah. So imagine you're just a second. Imagine you're a ship operator and you have all these regulations that they only represent costs for you. Okay, so you probably have to install filters and closed loop mechanisms and change to biofuels, etc., etc. But that's just adding more and more cost. So if we take it not from the perspective of how you can change your operations, but what competitive advantage can that give you? Because we have to look at it from an end-to-end point of view. So a producer, a manufacturer that wants to put its products somewhere else in the world needs the shipping industry, and they have to report in the end-to-end GHG emissions. So they will count on those shipping routes, on those shipping lines that produce less GHG emissions, because at the end of the day, that means the scope 3 emissions for the producers, and they have also to report into that. So in other words, you're part of a chain if you're in the shipping industry, and all the efforts that you're doing are not just to comply with the regulations, are just also to position you in a very competitive space with a cleaner product.
Exactly. And maybe, Carlos, you can give some more insights of how the shipping companies can have this end-to-end view of reducing the greenhouse gas emissions.
Yes, before I go there, just one thing. You have heard probably about the European Union taxonomy. This European taxonomy has 6 environmental objectives. The first one is climate change mitigation. The second one is climate change adaptation. Those ones have been already published by the European Union, all the details. But the third one is the sustainable use and protection of water and marine resources. That is the next one. They're working on that, and that will be announced by the end of the year. So that will be a very big dimension for all European shippers to comply with. Now, just for you to understand that this European Union regulation, taxonomy in this case, has what it's called a technical screening criteria. So basically the criteria by which operations are sustainable or not sustainable, to put it simply. Well, guess what? When we talk about transportation, including maritime or transportation, they are eligible for the European Union taxonomy. So in other words, if you're a ship owner, if you're in the shipping industry, the next time you go to a bank to ask for financing, you will need to comply with this EU taxonomy. You will be obliged to demonstrate how you contribute substantially to one or more of the 6 environmental objectives of the European Union taxonomy. Now, you asked me a different question, Stamati, and you told me, okay, how can SAP work with the shipping players? And I think we have great news, and that's just represented in the slide that I'm going to share. Basically, we have a solution that talks about sustainability management, and that talks about the corporate sustainability management and the financing sustainability management. But the even better news is that we have something called the Maritime Sustainability Management Solution, and this is an extension of our sustainability solution that help us looking into very specific dimensions for the industry. For example, which are the different operators, the trade routes, the shipping terms, the cargo, the tonnage, the TEU, the vessel and the vessel type, the trip distance. I mean, there are many dimensions that you have to consider to really report into the different standards. Estamatia mentioned some of those standards, for example, our MRV, but there are some other standards, and then there's the new European Union taxonomy coming. And the good news about this product is it gives you the whole granularity of data to report into any standard. And guess what? I tell you something, any company, your company, can go carbon neutral next year, but it can go bankrupt if you do that. So you need to make sure that whatever you do, whatever efforts to do, you do align with the IMO to be carbon neutral or to have a smaller footprint. You need to understand what's the impact on your routes, on your cargo, in your occupancy, in your miles, in the miles travel. You need to take decisions based on your profitability information. And that's why these solutions mix both the profitability and the sustainability solutions. What I'm going to show to finish is just a couple of those images in which you can put in your head how, in the next slide, how you can combine that profitability and that sustainability solution based on data that you have from your corporation, from your vessels, from your lines, from your emissions factors per vessel. All those are the source information. And what can you do with that source of information to comply in the next slide with all the different dimensions that we have been talking about? So if you go to the next slide, beyond looking at this modeling process, what we can see is exactly how we mix the environmental performance with the economic performance. Let's not forget that whatever we do, it has to be on a profitable sustainability and a sustainable profitability. Over to you, Samatia.
Thank you for this overview and very interesting insights for the industry. I do not have anything else to share in regards to regulations. Maybe Pedro can you can share your insights.
I think here the key question for us is what is the biggest impact, guys, that the shipping industry will have? I mean, is it an existential threat, the climate change for the shipping industry or not? It's like in plain English. What do they have to do now? And what this industry will look like in 2030, considering all the milestones we have up to 2030? I would like to get your conclusion notes on that, and then we can close today.
Yeah, so just some thoughts here. If you work in the shipping industry, probably you cannot single-handedly change the technology, change the way ships operate or how they use energy. So there's little you can do to replace the fuel that you're using in a ship that was built 10 years ago and that is going to be in usage for another 20 or 30 years. So the first thing that you have to do is first measure what is the size of the problem. And that's why the MRV regulation and the new European taxonomy is coming. So we really understand the size of the problem, scope 1, 2, and 3. We have the granularity of data. Okay, that is in motion. And I think all companies understand that. But now, more importantly, is how do you fine-tune your operation? What if you change your routes? What if you change your occupancy? What if you change your return policies? What if you change the subcontracting of some of your cargo? How do you measure? How do you mix bulk with container? All those things. Normally, we're making those decisions based on profitability information, but we don't have the sustainability information. And it's when you join these two worlds what is really transforming the playing field for all different players. I think this is where the near future lies. But the first thing that you need to put in place for that is a sustainability accounting system that works hand in hand with your financial accounting system. And that's why we are just getting a lot of requirements from shipping companies all over the world now to say, hey, SAP, we know that you are the leaders in the financial accounting systems. Now help us also with the sustainability accounting system.
Well, Samatia, I want to know specifically from you. You're talking to shipping companies as part of your customer engagements. What they get more excited about in terms of initiatives? What is the kind of project the shipping companies you're talking to want to do right now?
They want to measure their emissions, their CO2 emissions. They want to comply with different regulations. They have a lot of regulations out there. So I can say that they're most, let's say, trying to find a way of how to measure everything. And also, I would like to add that it is a peculiar, let's say, industry. Because, for example, one regulation is mentioning that the ships should limit the speed so as to have less CO2 emissions. But on the other hand, if they will limit their speed, then they will have to send more ships out there so as to let's say they will have to send more ships, and that means they will have more emissions. So they need to take a lot of parameters into consideration. So it is a peculiar industry. A lot of regulations are out there, and most of the companies are trying to find ways of how to comply with those regulations.
That's very exciting. What about you, Adriana? In terms of innovation, do you have a couple of ideas for the shipping industry to focus on innovation over the next few years?
Great question, Pedro. I think there are lots of innovation as far as that regards new ships building. And of course, there's a lot of opportunities right there to even be more efficient. Of course, not all of the shipping companies have the opportunity to invest in that area and just replace all their ships. So they can also look at how they can retrofit their ships to make it more energy efficiency, and don't look only at the fuel but also how they operate, and use different techniques which could be technical, which could be about how they operate the ships, what is happening in the port when they are standing still, and so on, just to make sure that they look for those efficiencies that could make some difference whenever they have old ships that could not be replaced in the near future.
That's exciting, everybody. A deep dive on a very important industry, and we want to do more of that here. We want to look into industries. And for all of you that are now thinking about where else you can get information on sustainability, we have the SAP Cares initiative. With the QR code in front of you, or just typing sapcares.com, you will find additional white papers, videos, and content that helps you deep dive on your journey for a sustainable future. And that's it, everybody. Thank you very much once again. I'm sure next week will be exciting. Our dear friend Carlos Diaz will be taking some days off. It's gonna be about Stamati, Adriana, and myself, and we're gonna talk about a super interesting topic next week as well. And I'm sure if you join us next week, you will love it. Thank you, everybody, for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.